Okay, so this is my school project. We were assigned to build something cool in Arduino, and in my opinion, this is pretty cool. This is a Simon Says game. I think that's what it's called. I'm not entirely sure. But yeah, it's pretty cool. Um, Here's the controller with buttons that input into the digital pins on the Arduino, as well as the LEDs, which are also connected to digital pins on the Arduino. And then you also have a white LED right here that flashes when it's your turn. So yeah, my favorite thing about this project was is probably the wiring. It doesn't get more organized than this. Like I think it did a perfect job organizing those wires and making them look good. So yeah. Okay, so this is the code for the project. Um, I built this in Arduino. I'll just go over each section and describe what it does. These are all the variables, um, obviously by the int declaration right there. And there's a setup portion of it that initializes each LED and input as such. Um, this generates a random seed. I'll explain that later. Um, this will start the game. This is the main algorithm right here. It'll basically just repeatedly generate random LEDs for the sequence, put them in, check to make sure that you do it correctly, and stop the game if you get it incorrect. So I'll go over each of the functions that I wrote. This is the loss function. This one basically flashes the LEDs when you lose, and it also sounds the slightly obnoxious buzzer um, along with it as well. This is the start function. This is what um, begins the game. So basically it will turn on all the LEDs and wait for user input and then turn them off and then allow the loop to start. Um, and this is the end game function. Probably should have done camel casing for this, but I'm not going to change it because I've used it too many times. But anyway, so this will basically just reset the variables, flash the lights using it by calling the loss function, and then just restart the game. This right here is an important function. This is show sequence. This right here will access the array, which is at the top right here. The array with it has a maximum of 500 slots, and it will store each of the LEDs and then display them by calling the function disp. I called it display and then realized that Arduino already has a thing called display inside the libraries, so it wasn't working, so I just shortened it to disp. It's pretty simple. It just flashes the chosen LED, and this will go through each LED in the array and flash them using disp. And you have the wait function. This is an important function. It's kind of multi-purposed. So in the start function up here, it will basically just use it as if it were just like a regular old void function to pause the program. What it also does though is it'll return the button that you pressed. So when it's checking what button you pressed when checking the sequence, it'll be able to know which one you pressed and make sure that it's correct. Interesting thing about this function is it looked a little bit different. So it used to just be checking for which button was set to high. In fact, I have a screenshot. Sorry, this is disorganized. It used to look like this, but the issue with it was that what I didn't realize was when I pressed a button, computers are really fast, so in the 1/8 of a second that I pressed that button, it would go through each iteration immediately and not wait for me to finish pressing the button. So I had to modify it, and it's not incredibly efficient. I could make it a little bit more efficient, but this is good for now. And basically, it has multiple steps, and the logic of it that waits until the button is released, and then it'll return the the button that was pressed. And then you just have check sequence. So again, it uses the wait function as a number return, and it'll just check if you got it right or got it wrong. If you got it wrong, it'll return false, obviously. And yeah, so that's utilized up here in the main loop, where it checks if it's true or false and ends the game if it's false. So yeah, that's the program. And I ran into a couple issues when writing this. One of the issues was what I said before. It was looping through this without waiting for me to finish my input. So it would put two LEDs into the array. I would press one button, and then it would just instantly go through the array without waiting for me to finish putting in the first input. And so that's not good. So I solved this problem by rather than having it detect a press down, I have it detect a full button press, which is a press down and a button release. So yeah, that's one issue. The other issue was the way that randomizers work in Arduino. Different from Java, which I'm a little bit more experienced with. Java will completely randomize. It'll come up with a different seed each time. So each time you run the program, it'll spit out a different number. The issue was that Arduino uses the same seed each time. So it would call this right here, and it would randomize it, but each time I ran the Arduino, each time I restarted it or re-uploaded, it would spit out the same randomized sequence. So to fix this issue, I have a seed generator right here, and it uses an analog input that I'm not using, a 0. I'm not using any analog inputs actually, but those are pretty random. They're a lot more variable than digital inputs. Digital inputs are 1 and 0. Analog inputs are variable. So I can use the randomness of that analog input to generate a random seed, and that is what allows it to generate a completely random sequence each time I turn it on. If you've ever played a game that generates random terrain, like Minecraft is an example, it uses a very similar mechanic. It generates a random seed, and that seed determines that random sequence. So every time you run Minecraft, it doesn't, generate the same world every single time. It generates a new one each time you click that button. So yeah, those were the main issues that I ran into, other than syntax errors and stuff. I haven't written in Arduino in a while, so I had to refresh myself on that. But yeah, that's my program. And okay, so here's the project. So first what it'll do, it'll flash all the lights to on, and it'll just wait for your input. So I'll input anything, say yellow, and it'll start the sequence for you. So it said blue, and I have a white LED right here that turns on, indicating when it's your turn. So flash blue, I'll click blue, blue, green, okay, so blue, green, blue, green, blue, and it'll just keep generating a sequence, and if you get it wrong, then, well, you lose the game. So blue, green, blue, red, and let's say you get it, yep, and let's say you get it wrong, like, oh no, I thought it was, it started on green, it'll flash those lights and sound that obnoxious buzzer, indicating that you failed. So yeah, that is my project. and I think it's really cool. It's a memorization game, and took me a bit to get to work, but it works nicely. So yeah.